G'day guys, welcome to today's All Things Geelong video, where today I'm going to be going through a similar route to my previous video where I did like a ladder prediction, where this time I'm actually going to be using Squiggle, the web-based client that we can actually predict the whole season round by round to kind of see where I think, looking at it from each individual game, how the ladder might shape up. Now, this video idea is inspired by the one and only Caden McDonald. If the very small population of you don't know who Caden is, I do recommend you to check out his channel. Probably like the LeBron James equivalent of AFL content at the moment. So, definitely great at what he does, great at his craft. So feel free to have a look at him and check him out and have a look at his videos if you haven't seen his content before. But alas, we're going to be getting into some Squiggle Predictor, and we're just going to kind of have a look at how I think the season's going to shape up. Now, I'm going to show you all my round one predictions, where I think most of these games are going to go. I have watched like some of the practice matches that have just passed this weekend. I think I've got a decent enough picture now to kind of see how good these teams are potentially looking. Now, obviously, these games were practice games, so take them with a grain of salt. But with that being said, here's my Squiggle ladder predictor. Let's go through round one together. All right, so round one. This one's always a tough one because, Richmond and Carlton, if you told me to predict this 5 odd years ago, I'd say Richmond easy, just a matter of how much. Now it's kind of tough because, Richmond is one of those teams that when they're good, they're really good. But when they're bad, they're just pretty bad. Like, I'll be honest, like looking at them from last year when they had those down games, they didn't look like the Richmond of bold, In saying that though, Carlton is definitely one of those teams that it's kind of make or break for them this year. I feel like they kind of have to see some sort of success in the year, and they probably have to be making top 8. Richmond is another team, obviously, that is in the conversation for top 8 as well. If you checked out my previous video with my ladder predictions, you would have seen where I've put both of these teams retrospective in the comp. With that being said, this is going to be a very tight game, but I'm honestly thinking I'm going to predict Carlton here to get it done. Just because I feel like Carlton's going to be very energetic at the start. I think they're going to be very desperate to get off to a good win, and I think they're going to get this done by about 8 points. Now, the next one, Geelong and the Pies at the G. This would be a Friday night, to my knowledge, because this game here would be the Thursday. This one, obviously, it's very tough, buys cap aside. This could honestly go either way. The Pies are looking pretty good going into the new year. They looked pretty good ending the 2022 season as well, narrowly losing to Sydney in Sydney. So I'm not really too sure, but I'm just going to put my bias cap on here and just say I reckon we should be able to get it done. We are missing a few key players going into it. Like, obviously, we've got Jack Henry out with a pretty long injury, something similar he did last year. Hawkins, I believe, is out as well, or he's been marked as questionable. It was one of the two. We've also got like a couple of other key players that I can't really just think of at the moment that are kind of questionable to get up on the park. I believe Collingwood might have a couple of players as well that they might be missing. So, it's one of those games where neither team I don't think will be going into it full strength. But with that being said, I think Geelong is still riding a decent wave of momentum, and I think we should get this done by about, I'll say, 16 points. North Melbourne and the Eagles. This is another one where it's kind of tough because these two teams are probably battling it out in that kind of bottom 4 region. Both these teams have a lot to prove, and whoever gets a win here in this round one clash of the Titans probably will really have a big dictator on how this season's going to go going forward. With that being said, though, I'm going to back this based off the coach, and I feel like North Melbourne probably will have the goods here, and I think they're actually going to win this pretty well. They actually scored pretty decently against, I believe it was Richmond in the practice game, but still lost by about 10 goals. But I'll be honest, I don't see West Coast being able to put on a scoreboard pressure, and I think that's where North Melbourne are going to get their win, and I'm going to predict them by 19 points. Port Adelaide and Brisbane, this is at Adelaide Oval. Again, this is another tough one because Port Adelaide is one of those teams that I feel like is going to be in for a good season, but I do have Brisbane as my potential best team in the home and away season, according to my predictions at least from the previous video. But, in Adelaide, Port Adelaide and Adelaide is always tough. It doesn't matter where they are on the ladder. They always seem to just give you a good run for their money with that very hostile crowd behind them. And I'm going to be honest, I think Port Adelaide can get this done. I reckon they'll beat the Lions and they'll beat them. I reckon they'll beat them by about a couple of goals. I'll say 10 points. Melbourne and the Bulldogs at the MCG. Obviously, both of these teams coming off somewhat lackluster seasons. Obviously with the Bulldogs going out in the first week of the finals, despite having a pretty decent lead against the Dockers, I believe it was, if my memory does not fail me there. And obviously Melbourne going out in straight sets, very disappointing results, considering that, Melbourne were a team coming off that premiership year with their premiership defense. So both these teams feel like they'll have a lot to prove going into the new 23 season. Both of them will be desperate to try and get a win to try and build some momentum early. With that being said, I feel like Melbourne should have the goods. I feel like, the new addition in Grundy in that side as well is going to help a lot. Probably provide a bit of leeway for Max Gawn to maybe even play more forward time and stuff like that, or vice versa. Maybe Grundy goes forward. I think Melbourne should get the goods here and they'll win by about 3 goals, so I'll say 16 points. Gold Coast and Sydney at Carrara. This one's an interesting one because I feel like on paper Sydney still have the better list, but Gold Coast have been building a little bit of momentum recently. They're starting to show good signs. With that being said though, I'm probably still tipping Sydney here. I think they should be the much better team going into it, and I think they're going to win this probably comfortably. I'm going to say about 25 points. Then you've got the Giants and the Crows, so GWS and Adelaide at Sydney. Adelaide look to be a team that looks to be a lot better going into the 23 season. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive and stuff like that. The Giants, I don't really see them doing well. I think they're going to struggle to get any more than 3-4 wins for the season. This could very well be one of the wins that they get, but I'm going to be honest, I'm actually thinking Adelaide probably have this one here. I think they're going to win this one, and I think they're going to win this pretty well. I'm going to say 25 points. Then we've got Hawthorn and the Bombers at the MCG. This one's definitely going to be a tight one. You can see even according to this graph here, based off the general population, they got this one being pretty tight. This is up for grabs, really. Hawthorn, I'm assuming, is going to be going into the season with a relatively young list. They obviously did do a recent, not massive delisting, but got rid of a lot of their experienced talent to make way for the younger talent. So obviously the plan and game plan for Hawthorn going into the 23 season is to still be competitive. Every team wants to compete, obviously. That's just the nature of competing, but they're not really expecting to go out guns blazing making finals or anything like that. They just kind of want to get the games into the youth and maybe try and discover some untapped talent going forward. Whereas for the Bombers, it's one of those seasons where they want to start looking to bounce back from that pretty poor lackluster season. They're one of those teams that could be on the fringe of finals, but if they were to miss out, no one would be surprised, if that makes sense. So with that kind of looked into it, I think the Bombers should be getting the good part of the deal here and getting this done by about 4 goals. I'll say 20 points. St Kilda and Fremantle at the Docklands. This is another interesting clash here. A lot of these games normally in round 1 will always be very interesting. The AFL does that on purpose because they want to build hype for the season. So this one could be one of those games where Both teams are desperate to get that first win because they kind of want to prove that they're teams that are better than maybe what the public might have them suggested out to be. So a win for either of these teams would be massive. So really, it just kind of depends who shows up on the day. Like any of these teams could win, given the right circumstances and motivation and whatnot. You know what? I'm going to tip the Dockers here. I feel like they've just got a more consistent list. I know I said in my previous video they didn't make any massive changes, and that's why I kind of have Fremantle stagnating the way they did. But in terms of just pure list for list, I feel like the Dockers have a much better list, and they should be winning this one. I'm gonna say it's actually a pretty good win. I'm gonna say 22 points. All right, I'll do the rest of these tips, and I'll come back to you at the end of round 12. All right, so I decided to do an extra round there because I wanted like a 10-round stretch to the finals. Because normally by about the last 10 rounds of the season, so about 2 and a bit months, is when we start seeing the actual contenders for the comp. So heading into round 14, I have Geelong on top of the ladder at 10-2. Probably a bit of a bias cap moment with a lot of those games, but honestly, I just think we're looking really good at the moment despite certain results here and there in practice matches and whatnot, followed by Melbourne actually at 10-3. I think they've got a pretty generous run. There's only a few games I could see them losing here and there, to be honest. Even Richmond at 10-3, so I actually have them rated a lot higher in my home and away season than I actually did in my actual prediction video so far, followed by Sydney in 4th at 9-3, so they're looking really strong. Fremantle at 9-3, and then Collingwood 9-4 as well, so at this stage, this is where the buys start to come into it. So some teams would have played more games than others, followed by Port Adelaide at 9-4. And then I've got the Lions, who I've had at the top of my ladder predictions at 8-4. I just feel like there might be some games there that they let slip, but that's how my top 8 shaped so far. Followed in 9th at Carlton, 8-5. You know, tracking along nicely for that probably middle of the road finish to try and sneak into finals. Bulldogs at 7-6, so they're kind of having a very wayward season. And then this is where the negatives start coming into it. So at 11th, I got St Kilda at 5-7, Adelaide in 12th at 5-8, Essendon at 4-9, Gold Coast at 4-8. So I've got them struggling a little bit at the moment, despite them being placed higher in my prediction around 9th. And then I've got kind of the usual suspects, the teams that I suspected would be in the bottom 4. In what order kind of really depends, but yeah, these are the usual suspects I've got down here. So Hawthorn at 3-10, North Melbourne at 2-11, the Giants with 1 win, and then West Coast with 1 win. So I don't think there will be a team winless going into round 14. But with that being said, I think this is not really a surprise to a lot of people. I think a lot of people have these teams in their bottom 4. And yes, that's how my ladder shapes up with the last 10 rounds to go. Let's finish off this tips, and I'll come back to you with a potential thriller for round 23. All right, and with that being concluded, I do have the final ladder predictor that I have for the season. So, at least according to each round by round, obviously I wouldn't have got it perfect because there's going to be teams that I've predicted to win round 1, and in round 10 that I'm probably going to change that prediction because depending on their previous 9 rounds up to that round 10 points, stuff like that. But this is what I've got so far. So I've got Geelong actually on top, 18-5, putting in a great season there. I've got Richmond actually in second, 18-5, just lacking due to percentage. Followed by in third spot, I've got the Swans at 17-6, and to round off the top 4, I've got Melbourne at 17-6. In fifth spot, I do have Fremantle at 17-6. And in sixth spot, I do have the Lions, the team that I actually predicted to be on top of the ladder. I've got them in sixth spot at 16-7. So I've got them probably losing a couple of games that I've looked at again and thought, oh, you know what, maybe, under the right circumstances, they probably don't get this done. Followed by Carlton at 16-7, splitting obviously due to percentage. And in eighth, I've got Port Adelaide at 16-7. Now, this is where the big shot comes into it. In ninth, I've got the Collingwood Magpies, missing out on finals at 15-8. That is a big call. Big call. But there was just some games I was looking at, and I was like, you know what? They could lose these kind of games, and could cost them the final spot. And yeah, to be honest, 15-8. I know there's a lot of Carlton fans looking at this, licking their lips, being, oh, please make it happen. Because obviously it happened to them in 22. But yeah, 15-8. I don't know. Like I said, there could be a couple of games that I've predicted probably a little bit biasly one way or the other. But yeah, I've got them, according to this at least, I've got them just missing out. Western Bulldogs as well, I've got them at about 14-9. And then this is where the big dip comes into it. So I realistically had about 10 teams in the finals race, and then everyone else, there's a bit of a gap between. So I've got an 11th Adelaide at 9-14. I've got St Kilda at 8-15. I've got Essendon at 8-15. I've got the Suns at 8-15, a team I actually had in 9th, so they've actually slipped a little bit according to my ladder predictor. And then in the bottom 4, I've got kind of the usual suspects. No one's really surprised to see these kind of teams down here, or at least I wouldn't be surprised to see these teams down here. In 15th, I've got Hawthorn at 4-19. Then I've got the GWS at 2-21. Then I've got West Coast at 2-21. And North Melbourne at 2-21. And that's it. That's my Squiggle ladder predictor. Thank you very much for watching. I'm not going to predict the finals because that'll be something that I'll do separately when we actually get to the finals. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Make sure that if you stuck around to the end and you really enjoyed this content, that you like, subscribe if you're new, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss a future video of mine. Round 1 coming very quickly, very soon. It is currently the 5th of March, so it's about 3 weeks now until round 1, 2-3 weeks. So fast tracking into the season, and I think we're just all looking forward to getting into it. So thank you for watching. Have a good day or good night, whatever time it is that you're watching this. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later, guys.